Tomorrow, is it a reincarnation or a future? Deficiencies in human knowledge. Repeated newness, that's reincarnation; unrepeated newness, that's the future. The development of human society has always relied on experience in moving forward, and people have looked to past experience to find the direction of future human development. In terms of human history available today, there are two important samples of patterns of experience-dependent development into the future. One is a sample in Chinese history from the Qin Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty. Under the unified system of prefectures and counties, each dynasty crazily drew nourishment from the experience of the previous dynasty, so China has a must-read book for emperors, Zi Zhi Tong Jian. The trajectory of China, as a historical sample of human social development, clearly shows that the final limit of human learning from one's own experience is self-imposed isolation. Just as when humans practice running, no matter how hard they try, the later they get, the smaller the increase in speed becomes, and eventually the cost becomes so high as to make speed improvement fundamentally impossible. According to the principle of systemic development, as a society, this practice of learning from experience over generations inevitably leads to turbulence within the system. The reason for this lies in the fact that the repetition of society over time will inevitably eliminate the leading role of the pioneers, so that there is an intrinsic inevitability of random change of dynasties. There is nothing special about an emperor; he is just an ordinary man, became a consensus in the middle and late stages of the dynasty. The intrinsic motivation for the deordering of the world lies in the "I can do it too" impulse that pervades the minds of almost all ambitious people, men and women alike. This contrasts with Newton's worldwide recognition, for no other reason than that in Newton's case, "I can do it too" was the genius of a very small minority. Another sample is what one sees today, the integrated global development resulting from the ongoing modern industrial revolution. When the total amount of incremental consumption cannot meet the requirements of productivity release, or becomes the fastest method of productivity release. From the World War I to the World War II to the current new war haze overshadowing the skies of the Russian-Ukrainian Middle East and the East Asian Peninsula. All are the freshest footnotes of the new pattern of world development under the modern industrial system. Which of those participants in the World War I, World War II and up to today's wars in Russia-Ukraine and the Middle East were not forced into war? But the fact that the total worldwide supply is much larger than the total demand with the ability to pay makes war inevitable. The experience of human development up to the present day has presented people with the result of either random changes of dynasties, as in ancient China, or the inevitable blue planetary wars every few decades, as in the world of the last 100 years up to the present day. From this, one can see that whether it is in ancient times or today, the so-called human development is nothing more than repeating itself under the established rules dictated by experience, day after day, year after year. Reincarnation has become the destiny of mankind. Let's take back our God's perspective and look at our surroundings from the point of view of mankind itself. When a person wants to change himself and make himself better, he generally has two paths to choose from. One is to learn from one's past experiences and make oneself better than before by summarizing them. This is the path that all mankind has been traveling. Learning from experience means repetition of yourself, or your father, or your father's father, and in essence, this is reincarnation. Any learning from experience has its own ceiling. Just as in the 2000 years from the Qin Dynasty to the Republic of China, no matter how good a farmer was, he could rarely produce more than 2,500 kilograms of wheat per hectare of land. But there is another way to make yourself good, to seek out those who are now good enough to learn from, and to learn from those who are already good enough to become better than they were before. This shift to excellence often all means a change of self. Just as today's farmers plant seeds that are recommended by the state rather than produced in their own fields, today's farmers have undergone a fundamental change in their behavior and thinking structure that does not come from experience at all, compared to the traditional farmers of China 100 years ago. At the same time, the yield of wheat has increased from the traditional 2,500 kilograms per hectare to 4.5 times that, to 11,500 kilograms. This contrast teaches that in order for a single individual to undergo a qualitative transformation, he or she must first transcend himself or herself. That is to say, the decision underlying the qualitative transformation of a single individual does not come from his or her own previous experience, but from outside of his or her own experience. Similarly, there are two similar ways for a team to become better. One is to learn from its own past experiences, and to summarize them so that it can outperform its predecessors. The benefits of this learning process are diminishing, and with the same inputs, the magnitude of the progress made will become smaller and smaller, just as the magnitude of the improvement in human sprinting speed is becoming more and more difficult and at the same time smaller and smaller. Another way is to examine similar teams to see which one is most worthy of learning from, and then learn from the team being examined. Just like the change in the content of education for Chinese students, from 200 years ago, when the teaching was mainly based on the teachings of Confucius and Mencius, to today, when the teaching is based on both arts and sciences, this change in the content of education has brought about a huge change in China, transforming a society where 200 years ago it became a lifetime honor for the average citizen to travel out of the county into a society where today loitering in Paris can be an option. For the average citizen. This same contrast tells us that for a team to make a jump change, it must first go beyond itself. Like the decision of a single individual to make a leap of change, the decision underlying a team to make a leap of change likewise does not come from one's own past experience, but from outside one's own experience. Learning from experience is not likely to revolutionize change, just as the steel industry did not develop from the experience of an agricultural society. Looking beyond one's own experience is the only way one can become better. Now, let's put away the earthly perspective and get back to looking at it from God's perspective. For humanity as a whole, where is the object of learning outside of the overall human experience? The current people have only experience. An individual cannot transcend himself, a team cannot transcend itself by its own experience, whereas the whole of humanity can transcend itself into the future by its own experience. What kind of picture is this? Going east with eyes looking west. What kind of logic is this? It is a logic that goes against the natural laws of the world. Human behavior is guided by people's knowledge. When mankind, whether in ancient times or in today's so-called future, always fails to find a new and unrepeated time in the endless cycle of reincarnation, this in fact can only point to one fact: the knowledge of mankind up to now cannot guide people to find the real future. This is simply pointing at humanity's nose: the knowledge of all mankind so far is defective. If the trajectory of mankind's forward movement is to repeat the past over and over again, then the existence or non-existence of the entire human race is fundamentally meaningless. The trajectory of mankind's march cannot be one reincarnation after another, and the future of mankind should not be a repetition of what has gone before, but the creation of entirely new records. Humankind has to transcend itself. As in the pursuit of speed, humans are going to morph directly from being tired as dogs to little dudes driving AITOs with one hand. Can mankind do this? The airplanes in the sky, the ships in the sea, the heavenly palaces in the space, and the Zhu Rong and Spirit on Mars, which are running around the daily life of the contemporary people in the news, are all clearly showing that mankind has really transcended itself as compared with the mankind of 500 years ago. At the same time, compared with 500 years ago, the social organization, people's management style, government management thinking and inter-country interest considerations leading to war and peace, which are closely related to every person, have clearly shown that the human race, compared with the human race of 500 years ago, is in essence the cycle of reincarnation, and there is no difference in the comparison between the before and the after. This can only mean one thing: the knowledge that guides human expeditions to the stars must not come from human experience. In contrast to the dramatic changes in man's ability to transform the material world, man's methods of changing the ways in which mankind transforms each other within mankind still have not broken out of the cycle of reincarnation. If one admits that the knowledge that guided humans to build spaceships did not come from experience, what is the underlying decision of that knowledge? It can send humans running to Mars, but it can't guide human society out of the reincarnation cycle. The entire intellectual community may be resigned to facing such an embarrassing picture. At the same time, if the knowledge that guides the operation of human societies can only come from the experience that they already have, then it is necessary to recognize that the so-called advancement of human societies is, in essence, a never-ending cycle of reincarnation. It is either the repeated iterations from the Qin Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty, or the continuous cycle of gunfire in each cycle led by the modern industrial revolution. That is to say, today is the end of mankind. The entire human race is reluctant. The source of all these problems comes from the knowledge that guides human action, and it is only by re-examining the entire body of human knowledge that one can find answers to them. People's knowledge must be able to provide guidance beyond experience, and only then will it be possible for human beings to break out of the cycle of experience and move towards a future that has never been experienced. When it comes to the future, in the 250,000-year-long evolutionary history of Homo sapiens, 99% of the time it has repeated itself in reincarnation, and only twice has it stepped out of the reincarnation and achieved transcendence in humanity itself. The first time humans stepped out of the reincarnation cycle occurred about 70,000 years ago, using the cognitive revolution to tell their peers about a picture that did not exist, and organizing the multitudes through making up nonsense, thus accomplishing large-scale project organization and engineering that could not be accomplished as an average animal. By making up nonsense, one has the opportunity to say what is not an experience, a possible future, and it is this function of making up nonsense that directly leads humans beyond experience. For example, if the first man who built a dam to hold back water for fishing did not tell of a dam that never existed in reality, or if the audience did not believe it, how could the dam have been built? It was the cognitive revolution that empowered a very small number of people to see into the future, thus pulling mankind out of the general animal conflation that soon placed him at the top of the world's food chain. The cognitive revolution accomplished what had never been true in experience by rallying manpower. The cognitive revolution can dispose of both the relationship between human beings and objects, i.e., material existence, and the relationship between human beings, i.e., social existence. For human beings, this is an all-encompassing reincarnation of jumping out. The second time mankind jumped out of the cycle of reincarnation, it took more than 2,000 years from the beginning to its completion, and it is still only halfway out, mainly in terms of material existence. This time, the first step out was Euclid's Elements, which provided mankind with a completely new system of cognitive methods that did not come from experience at all, and then it was 2,000 years later that Isaac Newton, following Euclid's axiomatization method, came up with a system of science that did not come from experience at all, and the role of experience in both Euclid's and Newton's systems was only one: verify the relation of results to reality, not the initiator of behavior. After mankind jumps out of the reincarnation cycle for the second time, when mankind deals with the relationship between itself and the material existence, the directional leadership does not come from the experience that mankind has already had, but all from the a priori that mankind has not had. It is totally new, not the newness of repetition dictated by people's experience. It is the true future. It is the jumping out of the reincarnation in terms of material existence that has given mankind trains, satellites, skyscrapers, and bridges across the sea that have never been seen before in history. Today, mankind is facing a critical juncture in its development from the two-dimensional world of the Earth's surface to the three-dimensional world of the vastness of space. The disposition of the material existence on which mankind's survival depends today is a priori. The construction of a 100-meter-high building is preceded by a design, not by the addition of floors by floors through experience, which is qualitatively different from that of the pre-scientific discovery period. However, the way human beings dispose of social existence still relies on the results of the human cognitive revolution, in which people draw all kinds of big cakes, and introduce people to different kinds of alleys by summarizing their experiences, so as to seek the interests of the cake drawers themselves. This approach has nothing to do with the scientific revolution of mankind today. This sharp contrast between the way people dispose of their material existence and their social existence is the only source of major contradictions in the world today. One cannot make oneself fly by pulling one's hair, one must have external forces to fly. If human beings want to take a new path beyond their experience, they must have brand new knowledge beyond their own experience. Where is the brand new knowledge that guides man beyond his own experience?
The video you have just seen is the opening of the presentation of the Journey of Energy program. How can we, as human beings as a whole, step out of the cycle of reincarnation and into the future? This question is not an esoteric one, but is the result of the researchers thinking about an optical technology that the researcher invested in back in 2004, a technology that could lead to products that could either be close to the existing system of industrial products, as a complement to the existing system of energy products, or have a completely new form of application, leading to the realization of a completely new system of industry. The researcher has no background in humanities education, and the main researcher graduated from theoretical physics. Therefore, when encountering major problems, most of them are thought in theoretical physics, which is like what people say, if a person only has a hammer in his hand, then he must regard all the problems as nails. Because the most familiar way of thinking is that of theoretical physics, the research method for the whole problem is also that of theoretical physics. Basic requirements for project research. First, the same argument is homogeneous in front of all coverable cases. For example, people are selfish. Here selfishness has an essentially homogeneous meaning in front of all people, and it cannot be said that it is the greatest selfishness for a person to give up his own life for the sake of a public cause, and this practice of redefining selfishness does not belong to the scope of research of this project. Second, historical facts may not be used as arguments to support a thesis, unless there are no exceptions. For example, hard work can make you rich. One example cannot be used here to justify an argument, because there are examples of hard work that did not lead to wealth. Third, it is logical to use historical facts to disprove an argument. As in China, many women love to say, there is no such thing as a good man. However, there is Jesus in the Western fictional legends and Lincoln in reality. There is the god of wealth in the Eastern fictions and Lu Xiaohui in reality. Obviously, this is an untenable argument. Fourth, may not quote famous people as an argument or argument. Such as Confucius said, everything in advance is established, not in advance is abolished. Meaning, anything that is prepared can be successful and unprepared will fail. The reason it cannot be used as an argument or thesis is that the judgment itself is not valid, it is an exhortation, but not the truth. If preparation were the rule, then there would not be so many candidates who fail the entrance exam every year. The vast majority of famous quotes have this hortatory nature, they are not the development of things itself, must be the intrinsic nature. Fifth, limited to the current level and power of research, for verifiable but not falsifiable arguments, we tend to the argument is established. For example, there is always a gap between people's imagination, no matter how fine, and the real reality. At present, we do not have the level and power to prove or disprove this point of view. For this case, in the project research, we are mostly inclined to the establishment of the argument. At present, the theory of the initial part of the study should be fruitful. The following is for people interested in the daily part of the results of the application of the theory. First, The relationship between the foundation of the establishment of each of Chinese and Western medicine and the direction of development. This result shows that the dispute between Chinese and Western medicine is essentially a conversation between a chicken and a duck. Just as watching talk shows makes people happy, so does roasting a whole lamb, but one should not, therefore, assume that talk shows should replace food or vice versa. Second, the relationship between the nature of energy and the forms of socialized energy and the forms and consequences of energy acting on society. This result leads to an explanation of why Europe, the home of electricity, is weaker than the United States, and then China, in the application of electricity, and to a new application that can be put into practice, the energy chip. Its effect can be analogous to the current electronic chip to change the way people work, energy chip to reconstruct people's living environment. Third, the relationship between retail operation development tools and development directions. This result can lead to the choice of retail companies, whether e-commerce or ground stores, from hand-to-hand combat to remote-controlled combat. The essence of PDD surpassing Taobao is not the effect of low prices, but the inevitable result of the same tool system. At present, it is a cold weapon war. Liquor is impossible to win in the competition with low prices in China. The current development pattern of China's liquor industry is the result of another tool system that is essentially different. Whether it is a retail company or a liquor company, there is currently not much research on how the foundation that supports the function of their respective tool systems has been transformed. The research on these issues will help advance the retail operation from the current cold weapon war to a hot weapon war. It is obvious to all that this is a natural advantage for those who are advanced. For this reason, the huge Chinese empire became a meal for a group of small countries at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. Fourth, the nature of the existence of international social organizations and the internal logic of their operation. This result gives 4 levels of international interregional competition and cooperation. Between the levels is not a division of the region, but the rise and fall of dimensions, and the constraints and synergistic relationship between the different levels each other. Fifth, missing disciplines in the knowledge spectrum. With the periodic table of chemical elements, people know which chemical elements have not yet been discovered. Similarly, through the knowledge spectrum, people are able to discover that some disciplines have indeed been missed. As a theory, the knowledge production model has more application scenarios. Before discussing various applications, it is necessary to introduce the boring theoretical system of deduction, so that people can understand the logical channel for the emergence of the above applications, and at the same time, the interested party can also be based on these theories for more application scenarios to build, just as people mastered the principles of Newtonian mechanics, not only to be able to calculate the vibration of the harmonic vibration cycle, but also to reasonably build the mechanical structure of a particular skyscraper. Finally, thank you for watching. Can see here shows that you are really interested in this discussion. Please leave a message in the comment area, and we will be at the time of the energy chip listing, through the comment area message using the lottery method, to produce 10 lucky winners, and invite the drawn audience to participate in the opening ceremony of the energy chip listing. Thank you.